Alright, what's up everyone? Welcome back to another episode of List Doctor with me, PhD, medical doctor of Warhammer, Joshua Joshi Howard. Today, we're going to be talking about new lists right after the MFM and get to see exactly what people are thinking about and take a look at how we could potentially improve some of the ways that they are going to be building lists. I wrote a couple of jokes in here, so we're going to see if I'm funny. To start off with, if you are interested in seeing what other people are doing that is very successful, make sure you go ahead and check it out in the Ko-fi page. I'll find it down in the description below. Of course, it is free. You can pay something if you want, but don't ever feel pressure to give me money. Also, I forgot to update this, but either way, a couple of big things here. I have a lot more members, and there are members currently in my Discord, so make sure that you go ahead and join the Discord. There's a little gear that you can find, and you will click connections, and it should automatically bring you into the Discord. If you do not have Discord already, or you can't find it for some reason, you can go ahead and send me the password. It is still Kazarkin. If you send it on Reddit or on Discord or something, I will go ahead and manually add you to the Discord or give you an invite. Either way, you guys know what the deal is. Other big thought about this, if you want to be part of these episodes in the future, make sure you go ahead and join the Discord. I'll be posting opportunities to be part of this be part of this series as well as all the other feedback. I'll generally ask these people first. So make sure you go ahead and do that. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the lists. So, the first one, we do have Commander Valdor, and I have a little bit of context that they gave. The game plan is to have the Death Riders and Gaunt's Ghosts use the Infiltrate ability to pen in the opponents into their DZ. Then we use the Scouts to support the Dorns and threaten both side objectives, while the Grins, Deathcore, Exterminator, and Hellhound run up the middle. So I'll start off by saying I don't love the idea of throwing away Gaunt's Ghost, and I really hope that Commander Valdor is talking about using the redeploy trick that I mentioned in both the Lord Solar and Gaunt's Ghost videos, where you deploy them to block out enemy infiltrators, then you redeploy them to safety, where they can do usually containment if you go first. That said, I think this list looks pretty reasonable. I really like the Hellhound Exterminator and the Double Dorn package. It's something I've been running at GTs for, I think, at least my last 2 events, maybe last 3 events, to some decent success. However, my main concern looking at this list is it doesn't have a lot of midboard gum. It doesn't have a lot of things to just get stuck in the middle of the board to make sure that their big, scary melee pieces aren't really harassing our backline, aren't making the Dorns and the Exterminator uncomfortable. And there are a couple of ways that I would consider handling this. One of them is just dropping the tank commander, right? I've been running a similar list to this without the tank commander. I've never really felt like I needed the orders coming in from the tank commander with Grand Strategist, and I had more Bulgrin, so Lord Solar had more things that he was trying to order than what Commander Valdor is bringing in this. However, I think that's boring. I don't want to just talk about what we were doing on the previous MFM. Let's go ahead and talk about things and try and make sure we include some of the things that have changed in the most recent patch. So, as I look at this, I'm instead going to make a couple of changes in order to keep the tank commander with Grand Strategist in, because I think the new the new tank commander is super cool. The fact that it now has the squadron keyword, it now gets lethals, and it can order itself is a really big buff. However, looking at this in general, I think the first change that always happens is I don't think Creed really has a position in this list. With Lord Solar, we already have enough CP. We are generally going to be using it on grenades and Overwatch and Tank Shock and New Orders a lot. And we have the freedom to go for Fields of Fire if we ever have a turn. It's like, well, that thing really needs to die already. So we don't really need Creed. It's just a nice piece to have. But because we are trying to fix other problems, we don't really allow ourselves to go with nice-to-have units. I also am going to keep in the Death Rider Squadron Commander and the Death Rider Squadron because I think they're cool, and it definitely seems very thematic with what Valdor is doing. However, if you are trying to play this in tournament play, I would definitely consider bringing Ratlings in this position instead, just because they are a lot cheaper than what you can do with the Death Riders. Anyway, like I mentioned, I mostly want midboard gum. In order to make that happen, I'm going to be downgrading the 2 Rogel Dorns into Luminar's battle tanks. And I don't think this is that much of a downgrade, because if you look at it, 2 Rogaldorns do 2 Luminar's Battle Tanks. The Luminar's Battle Tanks do more damage per point than the Rogaldorns actually do, and we have an entire extra tank in the Tank Commander than we were having in lists that I was bringing. But with all that said, we still need to add the midboard gum in. I'm going to go ahead and add the double Catachan Chimera package, and this has just been really, really strong. You decide, you can put the Krieg off on your natural objective in ways that David Purcell has done to make sure that you have something to deny, call the Horde, something that is really annoying for opponents to try and remove from over there, and also just represents 40 to 60 OC, depending on if you want to give them the duty and honor. At the same time, we now have really fast pushing pieces that actually take real firepower from our opponents to take out in the Chimeras. So it ends up being a list that has a lot more control over the midboard than what we were seeing before, and it only sacrifices a little bit of damage in order to get there. So I think this is kind of a no-brainer. Oh, we also have to cut a Scout Sentinel. When I was looking at this, if we drop Ursula Creed and downgrade 2 Rogaldorns to 2 Luminous Battle Tanks, that puts us at 200 points to work with, because Valdor only had 1995. So we really wanted to get to 250, because a Catachan Chimera package is each 125 points. We want 2 of those, which needs 250, so we end up having to cut 1 Scout Sentinel. I think, in general, there's not a lot that a second Scout Sentinel can do that the first one can't. It's generally going to be a bait piece. We generally want our opponents to be shooting at this anyway, so having a second one for the reroll ones is a nice bonus to have in the list, but especially now that we have Luminous Battle Tanks, which are rerolling ones anyway, it's not necessarily going to be adding a whole lot, so I'm going to downgrade that as well. And ultimately, I think this list is something that is very much something that you could take to an RTT, take to a GT, and you're not going to be held back by the list at all. So I really like what Commander Valdor was doing originally, just going to make a couple of small improvements to take it to that next level. All right, next, we have a repeat guest coming back to the clinic, I suppose that's what I am running here. He's running Lord Solar Leontis, Platoon Command Squad, Gaunt's Ghost, 1 unit of 10 infantry. This probably has a mortar. I think the Platoon Command Squad also has a mortar. You probably just want 1 most of the time, unless you happen to be running into a lot of Drukhari or like Scout Marines in your local meta. 3 units of 3 Ogryn, 3 Chimeras with Bolters, 3 Torax Primes, 3 units of 10 Tempestus Scions, 3 units of 3 Scout Sentinels, and 2 Aquilons. And the context that GeorgeLeEpic gave. Oh, also, I think either like one of us is clearly doing math wrong. I don't know which one of us it is, but based on, like, I cross-checked several things, and I'm pretty sure there's 1,980 points in the list that George submitted, so there might be, like, a Grand Strategist on the Platoon Command Squad that was just not listed in what George let me know, because he said that it was 1995, but either way, I'm going to be going off of what was actually submitted. The context George gives: fairly straightforward game plan, Sentinels scout to objectives, and try and put a turn 1 dent in any scary tanks. If anything tries to charge or contest objectives, the Scions will be waiting to blast them off. Gaunts and Aquilons for secondaries, taking out any chaff fighting on safe objectives by themselves. Plenty of reinforcement options, and a unit of Sentinels or Scions coming back will both pack a punch. I agree. I think this list has a very clear game plan, but to be entirely honest, I'm not convinced that this game plan is super strong as is. I think it's missing some of the bits of damage that can really take it to the next level. It also, I think he mentioned this, is inspired by Matthew Edgington, who went 4-0-1, 4 wins, no losses, and 1 draw at the London GT recently, and had some similar pieces to this, making use of a lot of signs, making use of some indirect pieces, and I think this is not quite as good as that, but what I want to do is I want to try and pump it up a little bit. So the 2 issues that are arising almost instantly as I'm looking at this list, the first one is it doesn't kill tanks very well. 3 units to 3 Scout Sentinels will pack a punch on the turn that they also have their Hunter Killers, but after that's gone, I mean, you have 9 las cannons, but every single one of these units represents 6 bring it down points for our opponents, which is kind of scary. Especially if they have any ability to kill Scout Sentinels, and Scout Sentinels are not that difficult to kill. The second major issue that I'm looking at with this is I don't really know what Lord Solar is doing. in this list. He's handing out a couple of moves here and there. He's generating some CP for us, which is not bad, but he's a very expensive piece to just be asking, what, like, why is he here? Like, what is he buffing up? In a lot of double Dorn lists, the answer is double Dorns. And Bulgrin lists, it's the double Bulk, or it's all the Bulgrin that are in the list. Here, it's just a couple of moves on a couple of vehicles, which, it's nice, but is not necessarily going to be a make or break difference for a lot of our lists. So with that in mind, I am actually going to be cutting him. Because my goal here is, if we're going to be playing a Scions list, let's play a Scions list. So the big thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be dropping the Lord Solar and the Platoon Command Squad, which will free up 185 points right off the bat. And that'll give us a lot of freedom across the board. The other major cut that I'm looking is the 3x3 Scout Sentinels is a lot of fun. However, I really just want to have the one big unit of Scout Sentinels, and just as like I was talking about in the Commander Valdor list, I'm not really sure what the second and third unit are really providing when this is mostly a tech piece in the first place. This is mostly something that we are bringing because it's cool and it's not something expected. But after that first Alpha Strike, you kind of sit there and go, what do? We don't have enough follow-up because we can only res one of these. We just have 3 las cannon shots. They're hitting on 4s, usually rerolling 1s. Not super exciting. So I'm going to also drop 4 of them and go from 3 units of 3 to 1 unit of 3 and 2 units of 1, just to have them around as some good scoring pieces and action monkeys and move blockers that they can still do their job. So we can just kind of park one of them on a side objective somewhere if we really need to, but we also have plenty of Ogren and Chimeras and Toroxes to do that if we want. Let's talk about what we're adding. So the first thing is, to make sure we're not starved on CP, we're going to add Ursula Creed into the list. And Ursula Creed does a couple of things. One, she will average 2.5 CP for us per game, whereas Lord Solar will average 5 CP for us per game, or a little bit less than that because he'll die sometimes. And the way that you do this is you give Ursula Creed access to a mortar, you shoot suppression fire for free every single turn, and it doesn't do a lot, but the biggest part of it is you use the Foxcaster to try and roll 4-ups, and if you get a 4 or higher, you get a bonus CP. So between that and tactical objectives that we don't want to score, it ends up being about as good as Leontis in terms of CP generation. We also can use Fields of Fire for an average cost of 0.5 CP per use, because you discount it by 1, it goes from 2 to 1, and then half the time you're going to get that 1 CP back. So on average, you're spending half a CP to use Fields of Fire. It also gives us something to screen our backfield with, which we were kind of missing if we just removed the Lord Solar and Platoon Command Squad, because generally they, in conjunction with the Infantry Squad, would be hanging out in our backfield. Now it's going to be Creed and the Infantry. Other thing we're going to be doing, so if we're going to be playing a Torox Prime Bombs, as I've oftentimes called them in the past, I want them to be really scary. Right now, they are decently scary, but they can really go to the next level. And the way that we're going to do this is by changing some of the Tempestus Scion 5-man squads into command squads. And this does a couple of things. One, it gives you access to orders. So instead of just jumping out and shooting 5 plasma shots with the plasma gun, or 2 plasma guns and a plasma pistol, now we're going to be shooting a lot more than that. Each of those plasma guns are going to be getting 3 shots, and then we're going to have 2 plasma pistols. So instead of shooting 5 plasma shots, we're shooting 8 plasma shots. They're also going to have sustained, which is going to be a big deal. And everything in the Scion Command Squad is also going to be getting the rerolls from the Torox Prime and the Tempestus Scion roll at the same time. So suddenly we're going to make these Torox Primes way scarier because they're going to have more shots and they're going to be having higher quality shots at the same time. That ends up costing us 60 points across this whole thing. And then the last thing I kind of want to bring out is, because we're being inspired by Matthew Edgington and the list that he was bringing, instead of taking all these Scout Sentinels, I'm going to be popping in a couple of Rapier Laser Destroyer batteries. 2 units of 3 of them, to be specific. It is worth noting that each Rapier Laser Destroyer break isn't going to be doing quite as much damage as a unit of 3 Scout Sentinels when it does still have its Hunter Killers. However, it does do more damage than Scout Sentinels when they don't have their Hunter Killers anymore. And importantly, it's not super important that we are going to be killing vehicles every single turn, but we do need to threaten our opponent and let them know that we can kill them every single turn. And throwing down 6 twin-linked las cannon shots every single round is definitely a way to keep our opponents honest in the way that they're playing on the board. Ultimately, what we've done is we've changed it from a list that is a little bit static with the Lord Solar unit to one that is even more mobile than it was before. It's going to be very fast on the board between the Taurox Primes and the Chimeras. They have a lot of lethal hits into vehicles that we can buff up with Ursula Creed whenever we really need to. And we're also going to be having these Taurox Primes really, really threatening on the board. So overall, just going to be pumping up the damage a little bit across the board in George's list and cutting out some of the superfluous things that we don't necessarily need to see in this most recent version. The other nice thing about this is now all of our Tempestus Scions are battle line, which is really good for like stalwarts and raised banners and secret missions. Cool. Next, let's go ahead and talk about Harry Phil's Lament. Harry Phil's Lament's list. There we go. We figured it out. Lord Solar, Ironhand Strachan, a tank commander with Grand Strategist, a Cadian command squad, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 2 units of 2 Chimeras, 1 unit of 6 Bulgrin, 1 unit of 5 Grey Knight Terminators allied in, 2 units of Aquilons, 1 Hellhound, and 2 Rogaldorns. And Harry said he wasn't sure if this list was actually legal because he had tallied it by hand, but good news, Phil, either we're both doing math wrong or your math is correct, because this list is 2,000 points on the nose, and I have to say, I think this list is just pretty decent. There's not a whole lot here that I think is obviously needing to go. I'm a little sad that there's not an Exterminator because I love the Hellhound Exterminator Double Thorn package, but it's not as though we're losing out on damage all that much because we do have the Tank Commander with Grand Strategist also hanging out here. To be entirely honest, I'm still not entirely sold on Grey Knight Terminators, since I think, in general, I would still rather have a big unit of Scions for, I think it's 40 points less, or Bulgrin for, I think it's 10 points more, but it's an interesting piece to have, and it's a rapid ingress threat that is always going to exist for us. Honestly, I'd be down to just run this at an RTT and get a better feel for it, but, of course, this is List Doctor. You don't come to me to submit a list and say, yeah, you're great. No, you go to the clinic, you go to the doctor, and the doctor's going to tell you there's something wrong with you, because otherwise we don't get paid that sweet insurance money. So I got to find something wrong with it. And this is a pretty small change. My only real thought here is I'm not super sure what the second unit of Aquilons is doing. The first one creates a lot of pressure simply by existing, and your opponent's going to have to respect the possibility of 3-inch deep strike. They're going to have to be protecting their chaff units on side objectives, but the Aquilons aren't really punching holes in screens for anything. You're not really opening up the board for Scions. You're not really opening up the board for rapid ingress threats off on the sides, because Grey Knight Terminators, they have deep strike already, and with rapid ingress, they can kind of get anywhere that they want, because they're generally going to be doing it behind cover anyway. So I think the second unit of Aquilons is mostly just being a scoring piece. And if we just have a scoring piece, well, I want the best scoring piece in the game, and we can find the points for Gaunt's Ghost by cutting 1 unit of Aquilons and cutting the Grand Strategist off the Tank Commander. I said this in one of the previous videos. I think it was Commander Valdor's list. Again, I have not really ever felt a moment where I've needed more orders than Lord Solar's 3, and I'm running more things that are asking for orders than Harry Phil's Lament, right? I don't know what to call it, if I'm supposed to call him Harry Phil or Lament. Either way, like my list that I've been running at GT is 2 Rogaldorns, an Exterminator, and 3 units of Bulgrins for realistically 6 things that are asking for orders. However, this list only has 4 things in the Rogaldorns, the Hellhound, and the Bulgrin. I don't really think we need the Tank Commander since we don't need the Grand Strategist since the Tank Commander can order itself anyway, and then we only have 3 things that could potentially get orders. The Hellhound doesn't really need one, so Lord Solar has all the orders he needs to give between the Bulgrin and the 2 Rogaldorns. Ultimately, I think the list was good before. We're just making this small optimization to make it even better at scoring, which is, of course, how you win games. And Harry, Phil, Lament, that's going to be $10,000, so I hope you have insurance. Or maybe you're not American. I don't know. I'm American, though, so I'm going to get paid. Okay, we have one final list to go over today. This is Proby, or the Proby, as they are in Discord. Gaunt's Ghost, Lord Solar, a Scion Command Squad with Drill Commander, a Platoon Command Squad, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 2 Chimeras, 1 unit of 6 Bulgrin, 1 unit of 3 Bulgrin, 1 Hellhound, 1 Leman Battle Tank, 2 units of 3 Ogren, 2 Rogel Dorns, 2 Scout Sentinels, and 1 unit of 5 Scions. And Proby says, I've also been thinking about splitting the big unit of Bulgrin to run 3 units of 3. 1 unit of Catachan, scout the Chimera up, then swap for a unit of Ogren to get some extra movement. Cool. I mean, this list looks pretty good. I'd be comfortable running it as is at an RTT to get a better feel for it, but there are a few small places that pretty instantly come to mind for some small optimizations in the way that I would love to play it. The other thing I think about is I look at this drill commander enhancement and just go, why? What are we doing with this? It's not the worst thing in the world, but it is 20 points that we might be able to upgrade something elsewhere in the list. Haha, foreshadowing. Because it only goes into effect if we rapid ingress and then live and then shoot something. So not only do we have to rapid ingress, we have to hope our opponent doesn't hit a charge into us. So it's just really tough to make use of rather consistently. Either way, this list already just plays the board. You don't really have a whole lot that is going to be coming in from the sides. You have a unit of 5/5 Scions, which is nice, and it keeps our opponent honest, but it's not necessarily going to have any dirty tricks, and I don't really feel a need to change that. So, a couple of things that I'm going to be looking to do. The first one is I really want the Luminous Battle Tank to be an Exterminator. You can still use an Exterminator. It's not quite as good as of a reserves threat as a Luminous Battle Tank is. However, the bulk of our army's damage is already coming from these Rogel Dorns. So if we can make these Rogel Dorns AP3 on the Oppressor Cannon, that's a really nice thing to have. So just swapping the Luminous Battle Tank for an Exterminator, I think is a pretty no-brain play to make. The other thing that I'm looking at is the Drill Commander doesn't really do anything for us at 20 points, and I'd really like to have a Chimera for either one of these Ogren units or the small Bulgrin unit, and we're going to find the points by cutting a Scout Sentinel out. This is the third time I've said this, I think. The third list we've gone over. I'm not really convinced on what the second Scout Sentinel does for us that the first one doesn't, and so just having another body that's going to be coming up the board and giving even more mobility to Bulgrin or Ogren just sounds really good to me. Again, these are pretty small optimizations that I would make. If you really want to run it as is, based on what you were bringing before, makes a lot of sense to me. But Proby, once again, $10,000. Hope your insurance has been good. So ultimately, I think like last time we did this, we had 3 lists, and they were basically all like, yeah, these lists look pretty good. I still think that the lists you guys have been submitting so far are definitely on the right track, which is feels really good for me. I don't really feel like a teacher per se, but perhaps like a guide in some ways. I think Commander Valdor, we already talked about it, really want some more midboard gum. Added a little bit more into here by downgrading some of our damage. It's not like we're lacking damage with 4 Lehman Rust holes already coming through, so we end up just having more ability to play the board. George, this one, it looks like a lot of changes, but I actually think the shell is almost entirely intact. We just cut out some of the support pieces and changed the Scout Sentinels to Rapier batteries, simply because they're a little bit safer, they're a little bit cheaper, and they allow us to upgrade our other Scions into more threatening packages. Again, Harry, Phil, Lament, whatever you want to, whatever I'm supposed to call you, looks really good, just adding in a little bit more scoring. And then Proby, of course, very similar thing. I just really like the third Chimera here, especially since we're running 1 unit of 6 Bulgrin like as a brick. If we can just get the other unit of 3 Bulgrin, we can drop them off, drop them off at the pool. We can let the kids go sit on the side objective, and then nobody's ever really getting them off of that. So ultimately, all these lists look pretty good. So with all that said, I think we're done. This has been an episode of List Doctor, once again put on by Dr. Philosopher, super clinician guy, me, Josh Joshi Howard. I got a big Teams event coming up later this weekend, so I'm going to be doing a breakdown of that sometime early next week, and then I'm still noodling on whether I want to do the Ogren Officer Training School or the Aquilon Officer Training School, based on my experiences. So let me know which one of those you're more interested in, and I will have one of those up for you guys by the end of next week. Anyway, thanks for coming in to this episode of List Doctor, and we'll see you guys all next time. Bye bye.